Thousands of years ago, a promise was made to a man named Abraham. A promise that would span generations, form kings, unleash wars, and define the destiny of a nation. From this promise emerged 12 lineages, 12 tribes, each with a name, a story, a mission. But over the centuries, these tribes disappeared, scattered, were destroyed, and some were never seen again. Have you ever wondered who these 12 tribes of Israel were? Why were they chosen? What role did they play in holy wars, biblical kingdoms, and eternal covenants? And why have so many of them disappeared from history, as if swallowed up by time? The book of Genesis records the names of the sons of Jacob, whom God called Israel: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Joseph, and Benjamin. 12 men, 12 lineages, 12 prophetic destinies. They weren't just families. They were banners, tribes sealed by a heavenly covenant. This isn't just a narrative from the past. It's a trail marked in Scripture, from the land of Canaan to the exile, from the book of Genesis to the book of Revelation. For there, in chapter 7, they reappear, 12,000 from each tribe, sealed for the end of time. Prepare yourselves, because what you're about to hear isn't just history. It's the revelation of a mystery that spans millennia and could be unraveling right now, before our very eyes. It all began with a voice, a command from the invisible. Leave your country, your relatives, and your father's house, and go to the land I will show you. So God called a man named Abram, still in Ur of the Chaldees, to embark on a journey without a map, with only a promise. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. In you all the families of the earth will be blessed. But Abram was childless, and the years passed. His wife, Sarah, already elderly, remained barren. The promise seemed distant, almost ironic, until at an unexpected moment, God fulfilled his promise. Isaac was born, the son of promise, the heir to an eternal plan. Isaac, in turn, fathered Jacob, and with Jacob, something changed forever. One lonely night, he wrestled with a mysterious man until dawn. Wounded but determined, Jacob declared, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." And there, the angel said to him, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because as a prince you have struggled with God and with men, and you have prevailed." From that moment on, Jacob, now Israel, became the father of 12 sons. Each of them would give rise to a tribe. Each tribe would bear not only a name, but a prophetic identity. What began as a promise made in the desert was now taking shape. The birth of a people chosen by God, destined to be a light among the nations, and also to bear the weight of an eternal covenant. The tribes of Israel were being born. But what did each one represent? And where would they go? The story of the 12 tribes was just beginning. Jacob had 12 sons with 4 women: Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah. But it was no ordinary family. It was marked by rivalry, jealousy, betrayal, and decisions that would resonate for centuries. Each son received a name with profound meaning, born from the pain and hope of their mothers, and each of them would become the father of a tribe. The firstborn was Reuben, son of Leah. Then came Simeon, Levi, and Judah, all also from Leah. Then came Dan and Naphtali, sons of Bilhah, Rachel's servant. Then came Gad and Asher, sons of Zilpah, Leah's servant. And later, Leah gave birth to Issachar and Zebulun. Finally, Rachel gave birth to Joseph and Benjamin, Jacob's most beloved sons. The firstborn was Reuben, but Jacob's heart belonged to Joseph, son of Rachel, the woman he had loved from the beginning. So Joseph grew up surrounded by favors. Jacob gave him a long, colorful tunic, one of a kind, a garment of honor that distinguished him from his brothers. But the tunic was only the beginning. Joseph began to have dreams, and they were unusual. In one, his brothers' sheaves of wheat bowed down to his. In another, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. When Joseph told them his dreams, his brothers hated him even more. Envy turned to hatred. Hatred, a plan. One day, Jacob sent Joseph into the fields to check on his brothers. But when they saw him from a distance, they said to one another, "Here comes the dreamer. Let's kill him and see what will become of his dreams." Instead of killing him, they decided to throw him into an empty cistern. And soon after, they sold him as a slave to some Ishmaelite merchants, who took him to Egypt. There, in a foreign land, Joseph was bought by Potiphar, Pharaoh's official. God was with him, and everything he did prospered. But even faithful, Joseph fell victim to a new injustice. Falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, he was imprisoned, forgotten, silenced, far from home, far from the promise. But even in prison, God exalted him. Joseph interpreted dreams, and one day, Pharaoh himself had a disturbing dream. No magician or priest could decipher it. Until they remembered the Hebrew in prison, Joseph was called. Before Pharaoh, Joseph revealed that 7 years of plenty would come, followed by 7 years of famine. He suggested that the king prepare. The Pharaoh, impressed, appointed him ruler of all Egypt. The Hebrew slave now ruled the most powerful nation in the world. Then famine struck, and with it, his brothers went down to Egypt to buy food, unaware that the man standing before them was the brother they had betrayed. They bowed down to Joseph, just as they had dreamed. But Joseph didn't take revenge. He wept, he forgave, he revealed who he was, and he summoned his father, Jacob, and his entire family. Israel descended to Egypt, and there a new stage of history would begin. Before dying, Jacob blessed each of his sons. But when he came to Joseph, he did something different. Instead of giving him one tribe, he adopted his 2 sons as his own. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine. With this, Joseph would become 2 tribes, and his name would be perpetuated through his sons. Therefore, the number 12 would remain, even with the exclusion of another tribe in the land division. But this mystery will be revealed in the next chapter. For what God began with Joseph would be fulfilled in unexpected ways. Joseph was the outcast who became the Savior, the forgotten man who became a ruler. And the dream he carried was never just his own. It was God's dream for an entire people. Jacob's family prospered in Egypt. The children of Israel multiplied rapidly. What began with 70 people grew to a multitude. But the years passed. Joseph died, and a new Pharaoh arose, unknown to him in the history of the Hebrews. He saw them as a threat, and so the chosen people were enslaved. It was more than 400 years of servitude, scourges, bricks, humiliation. Israel cried out, and it seemed the heavens were silent. But God listened and called a liberator. From the midst of a burning bush in the desert of Midian, God spoke to Moses. "I have seen the affliction of my people, and I have come down to deliver them." Moses, born Hebrew, raised in the palace, exiled in the desert, would now be the voice of God before Pharaoh. The plagues came, the blood in the river, the locusts, the darkness, the death of the firstborn. And finally, Pharaoh gave in. The people fled Egypt in haste. But facing the sea, they seemed trapped. Then the impossible happened. The Red Sea parted. Israel crossed on dry land, and the Egyptian army drowned. In the desert, the people received the law, the 10 Commandments engraved by the finger of God. But it was also in the desert that they revealed their rebellion, murmurings, idolatry, disobedience. An entire generation died before entering the Promised Land. Only 2 men from that generation would cross the Jordan: Caleb from the tribe of Judah and Joshua from the tribe of Ephraim. Joshua was chosen to lead, an obedient warrior, filled with God's Spirit. Under his command, the walls of Jericho fell, kings were defeated, cities were conquered, and finally, Israel began to take possession of the land God had promised to Abraham centuries before. Then the time of division came. Each tribe received its inheritance. The land was divided among the 12 tribes of Israel, but that map contained a secret. The tribe of Levi, chosen by God for the priesthood, did not receive territory like the others. Their legacy would be the service of the temple and the offerings of the people. To maintain the number of 12, the tribe of Joseph was divided into 2, Ephraim and Manasseh, the sons he had in Egypt. Thus the tribes of Israel settled: Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh. 12 names that marked the land of Canaan. 12 lineages that represented the eternal promises. 12 paths that would now become the backbone of the entire Old Testament history. But their unity would prove fragile, and what God had planted, with glory, would soon face wars, divisions, and a mysterious disappearance. The history of the tribes was far from over. Each of the 12 tribes of Israel had a name, a territory, an identity, but also a prophecy. Before dying, Jacob gathered his sons and blessed them one by one. His words were not only paternal but prophetic, revealing the character, the future, and even the end of each tribe. Reuben, the firstborn, was first in the natural order, but Jacob said, "You are my firstborn, but unstable as the waters, you will not be the boss." Reuben had dishonored his father by sleeping with one of his concubines. His tribe inherited lands across the Jordan, but lost its leadership. Simeon and Levi were condemned for violence. Jacob declared, "Let not my soul enter into their council." They had massacred an entire city to avenge their sister. As a result, Simeon would be absorbed into Judah, and Levi would be dispersed throughout Israel, but transformed into a blessing. They became priests, the Levites, consecrated to the service of the Lord. Judah received the noblest blessing: "The scepter shall not depart from Judah." From his lineage would descend David, the king, and later, the Messiah. Judah would become the most powerful tribe in the south, with Jerusalem as its spiritual capital. He was called the Serpent of the Way. His history would be marked by early idolatry. Although small, his tribe established a center of pagan worship that would influence Israel for generations. In Revelation, Dan is not even mentioned among the sealed tribes. Naphtali was compared to a free gazelle, a symbol of freedom and expression. Its northern territory was the scene of many of Jesus' miracles centuries later, fulfilling the prophecy that Galilee of the Gentiles would see a great light. Look, Asher and Issachar inherited lands east and north of Israel. Gad was a warrior. Asher was said to have abundance of bread and riches, and Issachar was described as a strong work donkey, willing to serve, but subject to tribute. A hard-working, though sometimes oppressed, people. Zebulun would live by the sea. His land would reach the navigation route and become a bridge of trade and maritime influence. Benjamin, the younger, was described as a ravenous wolf. From him sprang fierce warriors, such as King Saul and, later, the Apostle Paul. Benjamin's history was marked by intense warfare, including his near extermination at the hands of Israel in a civil war. Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's sons, inherited significant portions of the land. Ephraim dominated the north, leading the kingdom of Israel after the division, but it was also a symbol of apostasy and idolatry. Manasseh was divided between the two banks of the Jordan and experienced spiritual ups and downs. The inheritance was sealed. The tribes were established. But Jacob's prophecy was more than words on his deathbed. It was a spiritual roadmap. For many of these tribes, even the blessed ones, would fall into idolatry, fratricidal wars, and dangerous alliances, and what was supposed to be a nation united under one God would soon begin to fragment. The next chapter will reveal how this unity began to crumble, and how, little by little, 10 of the 12 tribes mysteriously disappeared from history. Time passed. After the conquest of Canaan, the Israelites lived under the leadership of the judges, men and women chosen by God to rule, judge, and liberate. But the people began to demand something different. They wanted to be like other nations. They wanted a king. Saul, from the tribe of Benjamin, was the first, tall, imposing, but disobedient. God rejected him. Then David, from the tribe of Judah, was anointed, a shepherd who defeated giants and united the people with courage and heart. After David came his son Solomon, known for his wisdom and the construction of the temple. Under his reign, Israel reached its peak and power. But with Solomon's death, everything began to fall apart. His son, Rehoboam, inherited the throne, but not the wisdom. He ignored the advice of his elders and oppressed the people with taxes and forced labor. The consequences were immediate. 10 of the 12 tribes rebelled. Under the leadership of Jeroboam, of the tribe of Ephraim, they formed the northern kingdom, known as Israel. Only Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to the Davidic dynasty, forming the southern kingdom, called Judah. This division was more than political. It was spiritual. The northern kingdom, under Jeroboam, separated from Jerusalem, the temple, and the worship established by God. He set up 2 golden calves, one in Dan and the other in Bethel, and said to the people, "These are your gods, O Israel." Idolatry spread. The prophets were persecuted, and the northern tribes sank into an abyss of sin and corruption. Meanwhile, the southern kingdom held out longer, sustained by the promise made to David. But not even Judah was spared from decline. Evil kings arose. The temple was desecrated. Justice disappeared. This division marked the beginning of the end for many tribes. What began as 12 brothers had become 2 rival kingdoms, a chosen people, now divided by hatred, vanity, and rebellion. But punishment would come, and when it came, the consequences would be irreversible. In the next chapter, the mystery of the vanished tribes, how 10 of them vanished from history, and what the Bible reveals about their dark fate. The northern kingdom, led by Ephraim and composed of 10 tribes, sank deeper and deeper into idolatry. Pagan altars were erected. God's prophets were silenced. The worship of foreign gods became intertwined with sacred traditions. Warnings came through Elijah, Elisha, Amos, and Hosea, but were ignored. The people hardened their hearts. Justice was perverted. The covenant was broken, and then in 722 BC came judgment. Assyria, a brutal and bloodthirsty empire, invaded the northern kingdom. Samaria, the capital, was surrounded, besieged, and captured. The land was devastated. Men, women, and children were taken captive, torn from their homes, separated from one another, and scattered across foreign territories. The 10 tribes were expelled, never to return. What happened to them? The Bible says that the Assyrians relocated pagan peoples to the land that belonged to Israel. The Israelites they took were assimilated. They intermarried with foreigners. Their languages changed. Their customs disappeared. Their faith faded. Over time, they became invisible to history, like smoke that dissipates in the wind. These are the so-called 10 lost tribes of Israel. Their fate remains a mystery. Some scholars believe they were completely assimilated and ceased to exist as tribal identities. Others believe that small remnants survived in distant regions, in the mountains of Persia, India, even Africa or the Americas, according to controversial traditions and theories. But there is something deeper. God never forgot them. In Ezekiel, God shows a vision. 2 sticks, one called Judah and the other called Ephraim and the tribes of Israel. And the Lord says, "Take them in your hand, and they will become one," a promise of restoration. One day, the divided people will be reunited. In the book of Revelation, chapter 7, the tribes reappear. 12,000 are sealed from each tribe, protected, separated, and preserved for the last days. But there's something curious. The tribe of Dan is absent, and Joseph, who had been divided between Ephraim and Manasseh, appears again as a proper name, a mystery that points to eternal decisions, silent judgments, and destinies sealed by God. The 10 tribes disappeared from human history, but not from God's plan. The question remains, where are they now? Are they part of the nations? Do they mingle with peoples who never imagined their origins? Or do they wait, hidden for the moment of revelation? In the next and final chapter, we'll look to the future. Because the tribes of Israel don't just belong to the past. They're on the prophetic path leading to the end times. And their reappearance could be a sign that something much greater is about to happen. Although the 10 tribes have disappeared from historical narrative, they remain present in the prophetic narrative. God has not forgotten them. The silence of the centuries does not mean abandonment. On the contrary, in the shadows of history, God has preserved what men cannot see. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37, the prophet sees a valley filled with dry bones. God asks, "Son of man, can these bones live?" And then, before Ezekiel's eyes, the bones knit together, sinews and flesh appear, the Spirit breathes, and an army comes to life. God explains, "These bones are the whole house of Israel, not just Judah, not just Benjamin, but the whole house, including the vanished tribes." Shortly after, the Lord commands the prophet, "Take 1 stick and write on it, for Judah. Then take another stick and write, for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel. Then join them together so that they become 1 stick in your hand. One day, what was divided will be restored. The people who were fragmented will become one again." In the book of Revelation, when John has the vision of the 144,000 sealed, he mentions 12,000 from each tribe of Israel. Ancient, seemingly forgotten names resurface. They are being sealed, spiritually separated, for a purpose in the last days. They are part of God's eschatological plan. But there is something mysterious about the list in Revelation. The tribe of Dan is absent. Many scholars believe this absence points to their history of idolatry and rebellion. Joseph, who had been divided between Ephraim and Manasseh, reappears unified, as if God himself had restored what had been fragmented. What does all this show us? That the history of the tribes of Israel did not end with the exile. They were dispersed, yes, but not erased. They were forgotten by men, but not by God. The same God who promised Abraham countless descendants is gathering his people step by step, even if the world doesn't notice. Today, Jews are scattered throughout the world. Some retain their roots, others are unaware of their origins, but the promise remains. Jesus said, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." He came to call those who were far away, to restore what had been lost. And in the end times, the gathering of the tribes will be a sign, a call to unity, a prelude to the coming kingdom, when the Messiah reigns over all. From Jerusalem, Israel, all Israel, will be saved. The history of the tribes is not just the past. It is living prophecy, because the God who called each one continues to call them, and soon the tribes will return. 12 names engraved in time, 12 lineages chosen by God. A promise that began with a man in tents, crossed the desert, flourished in a promised land, divided into 2 kingdoms, and was absorbed by the silence of history. They were enslaved in Egypt, freed by Moses, led by Joshua, crowned by David, corrupted by idols, divided by kings, and finally, scattered by empires. 10 tribes disappeared in the winds of history, like leaves falling in autumn. But the breath of God still knows them, and one day He will bring them back. The Bible begins with these tribes, and it ends with them. In Revelation, their names are sealed, remembered, and exalted. They are intertwined with the end of time, with the plan of redemption, and with the final manifestation of God's glory. Perhaps you look at the world today and see only nations at war, religions in conflict, and forgotten peoples. But in God's eyes, there is an invisible thread that connects all of this to the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Promises that involve the return of the tribes, the restoration of Israel, and the reign of the Messiah. Time is running out, and what seemed like ancient history could be a harbinger of things to come. Because when the tribes return, it won't just be the return of a people, but the announcement that the end is near. And that the King is at the door, the 12 tribes of Israel continue to resonate. Not only in the past, but also in the present and in the prophetic future of humanity. For centuries, the tribes of Israel have been sought, studied, and debated. Archaeologists have excavated ruins. Theologians have traced names. Entire peoples have claimed descent from them. But, in the end, the question that persists is not just, where are the lost tribes? But why does God still talk about them? The Bible never wastes words. And if the names of these tribes still resonate in the Scriptures until the Apocalypse, it's because they represent more than blood. They represent a legacy. They represent an identity. They represent a history that God has not abandoned, a history that is perhaps closer to us than we imagine. What if tribes don't just appear on ancient maps? What if they intermingle with villages, with common faces, with people who don't even know where they come from? But who still carry in their spirit an ancestral calling? What if you're a descendant? Or what if, even without biological inheritance, you're called by God to walk alongside His people in the last days? After all, the Apostle Paul wrote, "Not all who are descended from Israel are Israelites, but the children of the promise are counted as offspring." This isn't just a story from the past. It's a reminder that God is faithful, that He keeps His promises, even if it takes millennia, and that what began with 12 sons of one man will end with a redeemed people, united under one name, one king, and one purpose. The prophecy is alive. Time marches on, and the names of the tribes, which the world has forgotten, remain written in the hands of God. Maybe yours is too.